So today to talk with us more about the Holistic Health and Fitness Program is COL Marcus Hurd, the First Corps Deputy Surgeon. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Hey, Ashley, thank you. And it's good to see your smiling face back here in the United States.
I was just going to say the same to you.
Yeah, since our time in Germany.
Yes, it's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it is.
And so today we're talking about holistic health and fitness. And from what I understand, First Corps has been leading the way with the implementation of this program. So let's just start with the basics. We know that H2F is a human performance system, but what does that really mean?
Yes, good. Actually, great question. So first, let me once again thank you for having me on the podcast. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about all the great things that the soldiers and the families are doing here on First Corps. Now, let me get to your question. So what that means is that commanders now have a comprehensive, immersive, and integrated system optimizing the physical and non-physical performance of soldiers in their units. And the good thing is that this system focuses on 5 core areas: the physical, mental, nutritional, spiritual, and sleep aspect as an integrated approach to sustaining and improving overall performance for the short and the long term.
Okay. And so I think that we could probably talk about this and really dive into each part of this and go on for more than 30 minutes, but we're not going to. We're going to keep it to the basics. But so how do all of these 5 different elements work together to really support readiness?
So once again, you're asking some awesome questions, which I knew you would. So like the old BASF commercial, we don't make a lot of the things you use, but we do make a lot of the things you use better. H2F combines the Army's various programs and campaigns to date, such as the Army Combat Fitness Test, the Performance Triad, the Comprehensive Soldier and Family Fitness Program, the Army Go for Green Program, and the Ready Resilient Program to improve readiness directly. Now, it mitigates the constraints at the installation level by placing capabilities within the brigades, expediting recovery while reinforcing prevention. So placing the resources forward allows for the organizational culture to be more responsive to addressing concerns instead of putting them off and until they worsen. And that's what we really want. If the access to the capabilities aren't there for the soldier's not going to use them. And what we've got to do is destigmatize getting care and being a preventative culture in the Army versus being a reactive culture.
And so we're talking about, if I'm hurt, I'm a soldier, I'm hurt, I can go right in my unit, I'll be able to go and get the help that I need. Is that right?
So more specifically, and let's what we'll do is I'll glancingly talk about those domains. So if we're talking about from a PT perspective, guys are out there having a good PT session, they get hurt. Now you've got those ATs and OTs that are there so that you get hurt. Instead of going to sick call and having it addressed, you can go to your tier 1 or your tier 2 team and say, hey, look, I had this happen. Can you help me out? And now we're getting mitigation versus, I twerked something. Let me wait on it. I don't really have time to go to this. We got to go do this. So you're actively being engaged by providers or capability enhancers versus waiting for something to happen. And the same thing with the mental aspect. If you're feeling a certain way or things you want to talk about and you haven't been able to address, you go to your cognitive enhancement specialist and you talk about it. And you get that immediacy instead of letting it brood. And you do that for all the other 3 things: the nutritional aspect, the spiritual aspect, and the sleep aspect as well.
So do you think, and this might be I might throw you off for a minute, but with having the behavioral health right at the unit, I know the goal is to get rid of the stigma of getting behavioral health care, but do you think this will help that?
So up front, yes. And let me tell you why. Now I'm going to talk I'll probably talk about some of the other initiatives, but I want to bring this up because one of the initiatives that First Corps is actually engaged in is actually shown that is working and that does have benefits.
That's awesome.
So we have a Ready Leader Executive Program where we're teaching people how to be change agents within the framework of holistic health and fitness. And so it's going through that class, that course, that people are realizing, man, I didn't know that I had some post-traumatic stress issues or some trauma. I didn't know that the way I was brought up to act was very destructive to myself and to others. I'm glad I came through this to identify it. So yes, at the grassroots level, if your normal way of seeing things is to do this, this, and that, and we don't let you know that, hey, that has a detrimental effect to yourself and your environment, how are you ever going to change the culture? And we realize that the Army is a melting pot of different individuals who have experienced differing levels of trauma in their life.
Yeah.
But if we can get everybody normalized to identifying, hey, that's not right, and I know it doesn't feel right, and getting after it, then we can kind of stop some of the greater manifestations of it. Because when a person's experienced trauma outside of the Army, when they come into the Army, it's not going to get better just because they went to basic training and now a soldier. It could get worse because the coping mechanisms that they had before are still the same coping mechanisms.
Absolutely.
And since now the Army constrains those coping mechanisms, we've got to show you a different, more productive way to get through that. So that's why having it there is better than letting it manifest.
Okay. And so can you talk a little bit about the first core implementation of H2F and what you've seen so far from the rollout?
Yeah, so first, let me add some context. So First Corps participated in an initial pilot program that provided metrics focused on musculoskeletal injury improvement. That pilot resulted in the fielding of 7 Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams embedded within specific combat teams here in First Corps. Now, those teams consist of athletic trainers, cognitive enhancement specialists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, registered dietitian, strength coaches, and a program director to herd all the cats. However, those teams did not necessarily address the remaining brigades within the First Corps communities. So that gap in support prompted First Corps and our H2F working group to kind of develop an operational approach for full implementation on JBLM. Now, the foundation of our system addresses changes in the military organization while creating change agents within the JBLM community. Now, that resulted and manifested in some of the initiatives I'm going to talk to you about. The first one is the Executive Leader Readiness Program. Now, that's a JBLM interdisciplinary health assessment program for 06 and E9 command teams. And Madigan Hospital actually is a program manager for that, where we bring them in, we do our own senior leader assessment and apply all those 5 core elements to those senior leaders and give them the opportunity to work through that and address it, and then let them go back to their formation knowing that they are important too.
Yeah.
Then we've got the Ready Executive Leader Program, which is one I just mentioned earlier, and that's a First Corps interdisciplinary program for majors and master sergeants and below that provides education and coaching for culture change in the application of H2F. Because H2F as a system is great, but we haven't really taught the team members how to apply H2F principle in core entities throughout what they're doing in their daily activities. Then we have Readiness Day, and this is a deliberately scheduled time each month for leaders to build trust and get to know their soldiers while discussing the CSA's 3 corrosives: sexual assault and harassment, racism, and suicide. When you take all of these 3, and there are more, but these are the 3 main ones that are generating the engagement, the discussion, and creating that tapestry of contextual understanding throughout JBLM as to what H2F is, how it's going to be implemented, and how we're going to sustain it and evolve it over time so that it creates the best outcome and culture for First Corps Courage soldiers. And to date, we have experienced a lot of positive responses because we do surveys after we send people through the actual courses and say, hey, what do you feel? How are we doing here? And a lot of the feedback, especially the programs that involve the spouses, just huge. The CG gets to see the report where they say, I'm glad we had this. It really helped. My husband and I worked through some things that helped him to understand some things. And so those testimonies alone just make my heart smile hearing it.
So, I know that the Readiness Days is kind of a force calm down thing. And so I'm curious, what is the, I can't find my words right now. What has been your experience in the feedback from maybe just the JBL community on those and taking the time away from maybe training and focusing on this other aspect?
So first I will say this. If you come to First Corps on a Readiness Day and you're trying to get some work done, you might be upset because everybody is out. And what I have noticed just, coming from the OTSG DC area and then coming here and experiencing the Readiness Days, I really enjoyed it because, there's no downtime in DC. However, here, that deliberate, let's step away from the installation, let's get out and do other things. You hear the soldiers say, I'm glad we're doing this. And you know what? It personalizes the context and the contact. And given the COVID environment and everything that we're going in right now, that type of engagement is what's needed. Yeah. And from my perspective, just listening to the soldiers and the spouses when I talk to them one-on-one, they enjoy it. They love it because it's the one time they know they're going to be able to step away, take off the uniform, and just have contextual engagement and conversation.
That's awesome. So going back to H2F, I understand that there are some components that focus specifically on women's performance and more specifically postpartum care or postpartum. Can you explain what the Army's trying to do? Because that's awesome.
So just so you know, I will say, out of everything that we've done thus far, the team's focus on women's performance and pregnancy postpartum has just been outstanding. We have some really, really talented officers and enlisted soldiers that have been working on this. And so in 7-22, Chapter 12 addresses special conditioning. And on pages 12-10 to 12-15, it explicitly addresses pregnancy and postpartum physical training. So as women take on more roles in the military, particularly in the combat arms roles, we have to take a deliberate and informed approach to women's career life cycle milestones and the associated attrition factors that come with that. And so our operational approach, specifically the intermediate objective number 1, which was women's performance, was where we went with it because we couldn't just look at it from a big glancery perspective. We actually had to get smart about it. I had to get smart about what does that mean as a soldier and an officer. And so this, as we did the mission analysis, this objective was further informed by the November 5th, 2020 Defense Health Board report that says that 8.3% of women in all services leave for family reasons. And of course, in doing our research, we realized that for First Corps, Chapter H, which is the separation for pregnancy, fall into that family category mentioned in the DoD report, and it poses a significant readiness challenge for us. And so I've got all these soldiers and the guys that are giving us the numbers. I'm like, wow, 16% of First Corps is females, and we have this many Chapter 8s. Like, we have to get after it. This is literally, it was low-hanging fruit. So we put some more analysis on it, put some stuff on a whiteboard, and we came up with the women's performance objective. And that's what resulted in our focus and creating the actual piloting activities to get after addressing it deliberately, number 1, and more specifically fleshing out what 7-22 kind of vaguely talked about. Because they outlined, this is what we want you to focus on. But then when you take pregnancy postpartum and then you frame it within those 5 core areas, you get something a lot more consuming than just integrate P3T into 7-22. You have to include all those 5 areas. And so that's kind of what we're doing. Our response to it was implementing a pilot study in our engineer brigade, which is one of the tier 1 organizations. And we're leveraging everything within the system to help triple nickels, pregnancy and postpartum population. So we're the physical portion, they're doing the exercises with the PT and the OT. The cognitive enhancement piece, there's a cognitive and enhancement piece that we're addressing from a pregnancy postpartum perspective, where the cognitive enhancement specialists are getting after it. Nutritional activities, we're going to do a nutritional class that is going to integrate some of the things we're doing with DECA into their program. So for the ladies that are in postpartum and that are pregnant, they can look at preparing better meals for themselves earlier and easier, and help their spouses prepare those meals, because we know what you take into your body, the fuel affects how your pregnancy progresses. And so we're looking at it from that total perspective to include spiritual and sleep and what we can do. And we just finished the framework and all the protocols for the actual pilot program, because it's already engaged now. And now we're just going through and making the marks and doing all the things we need to get the data and have the guys over at Where crunch the numbers and come back and let us know how we're doing.
I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, and they just, before I left December leave, I think they had their first ACFT, where the postpartum and the pregnant women went and did what they could do in the ACFT, so we could get a baseline using the pilot system and then using our other soldiers, that are in the regular PT program. So that at the end, we're going to measure how much of an improvement there was with them doing the PT tests under the specific tier 1 and tier 2 teams versus normal circumstances and situations.
And so did the length of time that a woman has to get back to passing a PT test, did that lengthen, or am I making that up?
No, they did. The DOD did come back and lengthen that time, which, when we heard that, we were like, yes, that's what we needed. That makes it even better for outcomes, because, this is my perspective, and the guys give me a hard time for it all the time. I said, hey, look, I literally want our soldiers, our mothers, because they're making baby warriors. I want them to come in and feel that I can come and get pregnant, and not only am I going to be able to make great Americans and put out new babies that are going to be future warriors, I'm going to be able to get back into the fight feeling better and stronger from going through that. That's what we want. Yeah. And the team has really done a good job of taking my vision and the CG's vision and making it a reality. And we actually just did a small commercial where we talked about what we were doing in P3T, the inaugural pilot, and what was going on. And the soldiers, and I've gone to the PT session and heard them and said, hey, sir, we like this. We're glad you're doing it.
That's awesome. And I think giving soldiers more time to get back to where they need to be. You just had a baby and then you just left that baby. Let's have a little more time to get to where we need to be. I think it's only fair.
And so actually there's another, and I wasn't thinking about it when we initially did it, but I remember when my wife was pregnant, there was a fair amount of cognitive things that were going on. I'm a guy, so I don't know what it's like to carry life. But when we started doing the intake and initial questions, we realized that there's a big, there's money to be made on the cognitive enhancement piece. So for some of our soldiers that have had issues before, they may have not manifested before, but then they get pregnant and then they manifest. And so by bringing the cognitive aspect early into the pregnancy, wow, we've seen a lot of, good information and engagement on that aspect. And that I didn't expect to get that much information, but it really has made a difference.
Well, and I would think too that it probably makes a difference in the postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, all of that stuff too, that is often not talked about.
Correct. You're absolutely correct.
So that's awesome. But there's also other things going on with this program too, and there are big changes in nutrition, better meals, food trucks. What are some of those things?
Yes, so we're deliberately once again addressing nutrition performance and food insecurity by making eating better easier. And so one of my soldiers told me, "Hey, sir, how are you going to beat Grubhub, Freshly, and all these other guys, when I can just go on my phone and I can order this and get it shipped to my house, how are you going to beat that? And it really made me think. And so went back to the working group and talked about it. And, it starts with our warrior restaurants, where our culinary team members are creating meals that are competitive with 3- and 4-star restaurants regarding taste and nutritional value. And First Score is also piloting the Army Meal Prep Program. We call it AMP, where soldiers and Department of Army civilians are able to grab and go when they come, performance-based meals when they go to the warrior restaurants and in and out, and it's already done. That's so it's cool. Taking kind of a freshly or a prepackaged meal approach to making it available not just for the soldiers in uniform, but also the civilians. So now we want our soldiers and our leaders to think of the commissary or the warrior restaurants first when they're looking at facilitating their meal plans, because we're going to have food that's better for you, because we've got dietitians that are proving it, and it's going to taste as good, if not better, and it's going to be at a lower price point.
So how do you convince somebody to that the DFAC's got really good food, that you should go eat at the DFAC?
Yeah, so great question. And here's what we've done. We've kind of partnered with, we've done a really good job of partnering with DECA, specifically Miss Deborah Harris in DECA, to provide fueling stations in the commissary and participate in our nutritional performance course, which is for service members and their family. So the nutritional performance course offers shopping, cooking, and nutritional training utilizing DECA resources and those within the community to mitigate food insecurity. And that's for us, that's a game changer, because now I'm showing soldiers and spouses that if you have a limited amount of money, I can get you more food, better food. You can take that to the commissary and you buy these things. You can create, a meal for a week.
Right.
Getting the same stuff, using the same dollars. And that's been huge, because we often don't think about how much of a pay difference the soldier has versus the 05 or the 06.
Sure.
And there are more E1s than there are 05s and 06s when you look at it holistically.
Going and making your food is going to save you a lot of money.
Right. And so in that nutritional performance course, one of the things we do is we have the soldiers, we give them a microwave and a pressure cooker. And so in the course,
those
are
cool.
the only things you use to prepare food, a microwave and a pressure cooker. And then we let them go. We teach them how to cook. We talk about the nutritional value, what to look for, how to read labels. And it's all done in the commissary, because, DOD, that's their combat support agency. We own that. We take them there and we take their commanders there and we show them all this stuff, because a lot of the stuff they didn't know. I mean, I didn't know that the commissary had all of this stuff. And so you go and you learn, you're like, wow, now I'm informed. And now we teach them how to put it together, and it makes a difference.
And what to do with the ingredients when I get home. That's awesome.
Right. And the teams that have the best recipes, because we actually bring senior leaders in to judge, the team that has the best recipes, DECA takes that recipe and says, hey, Specialist Hurd won this competition with this recipe. Get Specialist Hurd's recipe. And DECA they put their recipe on their website. So it's awesome. It's awesome.
Do they have recipes that my kids will eat? Because they don't eat anything.
So it's interesting you say that. So, when you have, an 18-year-old private and they're in there competing, you would be surprised at what they can do with lettuce, ramen noodles, or whatever noodles they have, because they actually teach them how to make stuff from scratch. And some of the meals that I had the opportunity to taste, I was like, I could get this at the restaurant down the hall. Like, wow. I did not know that they could make such good food with just a pressure cooker and a microwave.
Oh,
and
cool.
Yeah, it is stuff your kids would eat, even my kids would eat.
I don't know about that. They're pretty picky. We're like chicken nuggets and maybe a taco. Anyways, so I understand that you've met recently with members of the community to talk about H2F. And so what is that about? Is collaboration? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Oh, yes, yes. And we recently just did this before the holidays. We met with some of our local and national sport teams, the hockey teams in
How
the
cool.
area, to discuss professional exchanges, workshops with our orthopedic doctors, physical trainers, our resiliency coaches, nutritionists, and all the things H2F related. Because we understand that for proper culture change to take place, it involves a community. So creating those linkages through collaboration kind of personalizes the effort and its effects on the community. And so we've been working with those teams to get them to come in and integrate in our community organizations and our annual human performance wellness symposiums, which makes the transition or the application of a holistic lifestyle a little bit easier to swallow. When you see your larger than life hero that's on a sports team practicing and exercising the things that you're doing at this level and how closely they're related, that changes your perspective.
Absolutely.
That changes the soldier's perspective and their children, their family's perspective.
How cool. That's amazing. I mean, you just think about, oh, here I am in the Army and now the Army's making me do this, but it's not just the Army. These are things that, pro football players have to do too, or are doing too. And look how well they're doing. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And one of the things in the meetings we just had with them, we had talked about, how we both play contact sports. Ours has a different outcome compared to the guys going to the championship. And so they were really interested in how, from a long-term perspective, because the life cycle of a soldier, 20 or 30 years versus a professional athlete, 10, maybe 10 or 15 years if they're lucky.
Yeah.
And what those outcomes and how we deal with some of the same things. And so that collaborative engagement has proven to be really fruitful as far as some of the things that we can implement and some of the things that we can provide as a community to offer on the outside and inside.
That's really cool. And I think that's really valuable too. So I know that you just got back from vacation. And so I'm not going to keep you too long. I know you are a busy man, but is there anything else regarding the implementation of H2F or just this program in general that you want to talk about?
So I will say this, as we continue implementing H2F, we cannot forget that this is culture craft and it requires deference at all levels. Its success is anchored in everyday practice from the E1 to the O10. And if we continue moving in the direction of holistic health and fitness, the positive implications for the future and readiness and citizenry and our national security are endless.
Yeah.
So, I just thank you for the opportunity to share that with you and know that First Corps, the only reason we're succeeding and doing the things we're doing is not because of one individual. It literally is because the leadership is bought in and invested in it from a culture change, a culture craft perspective, and they're allowing the guys at the lowest level, bottom up and top down, to collaborate, commensurate, and get after it.
I think that's great. All right, sir. Well, thank you again for taking the time to talk with me right after your leave. I appreciate it. And it was good to talk to you and see you again, too. It's been a few years since we were both in Germany, so it was good to talk to you.
Hey, no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Ashley. It's good seeing you again. And hopefully I'll be able to get over to your side of the neck of the woods and then we can walk the ground.
There we go. There you go. All right, sir. Have a good day.